If you come from a migrant background like me, you've probably heard from your parents millions of times about how much easier life is for you compared to how life was for them. Or even if you're not a migrant, perhaps you've just heard from the older generations around you, or you've just gotten the vibe that people suggest that for you, life is a lot more easier than it was for them. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I've come to the realization that this is simply just an unfair comparison. It's like comparing apples to oranges. It just doesn't make sense. And let me explain why. What I want to say to you as a younger person who's perhaps under the age of 35 or 40 is that you are not crazy for feeling like life is difficult and life is challenging. The reality is that it is. The people generations before you had it hard in many, many ways. Labor back then was much more physical compared to what it is now today, on average. Healthcare was not as advanced as it is today, so there's a lot to be grateful for today. Access to information was minimal, and assistance from technology was also minimal. But the thing is, life back then was also a lot more simple. Simple in ways that served our mental and physical well-being. And simple is the one thing that the younger generation of today have not had much of, especially in the last 10 years. I argue that younger generations today are subject to an extreme level of temptation that is addictive by design and causes direct harm to their mental and physical well-being. However, this thing that's tempting to them is packaged up in a way in society where it doesn't appear to be something that's directly harmful. It's just accepted as the norm. Whereas much older generations from decades and decades ago, they were never subject to this same level of temptation for these particular activities which cause them harm. It was never an option for them. I look around me and I see and feel a younger generation that is stressed and anxious. It appears that the younger generations are struggling to be able to find more peace and joy in the simple things in life without, and this is the important part of what I'm trying to say, without requiring external stimulation to support that joy or make that joy possible. Now, I'm not going to be presenting to you a whole bunch of meta-analyses and randomized control trials or other research to support this claim, but I do have the N=1 study of my life where, through observing with my eyes wide open, I've really been able to grow a high level of confidence that this increase in anxiety that spreads among us is strongly correlated with an excessive consumption of different things, an excessive consumption of news, an excessive consumption of social media content, and that includes things like LinkedIn as well, even though many people want to say that LinkedIn isn't social media, an excessive consumption of entertainment, Spotify, Netflix, Stan, Amazon Prime, anything that really counts as digital entertainment, and also an excessive consumption of highly sexualized content like pornography. The list probably goes on. But do you remember how I mentioned earlier that the younger generations of today experience a very high level of temptation that has never been experienced before? Well, that high level of temptation doesn't really have anything to do with these activities per se. The activities like excessively consuming social media or the news. If you were to keep peeling the layers of the onion and you eventually got to the bottom or the first layer, what you'd find that it's more so the nature of these activities which is what's causing the temptation itself. It's the nature of these activities that strongly differs with the nature or the environment that existed decades ago. Because you see, generations of the past, generations decades ago, they still had the same things. The mediums were just different. Like, yes, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have smartphones, but they had their own sort of entertainment. Maybe they went to plays, see plays physically in person. When it comes to the news, they would read newspapers, or they would have other ways to obtain that information. They'd listen to the radio. They just wouldn't have phones in their pockets. They would have to maybe go to the library to access a computer to access that information. So they still had a medium to access information, but the nature is what's different. And here's what the nature or the system or the environment is that's the real cause of all this. It's fourfold. The first is ease of access. Everyone has a smartphone in their pocket these days. It goes around with them everywhere they go. So there's no problems to access there. Most people, regardless of wealth, have a smartphone. The next thing is unlimited novelty. Now, when you search content online, it's very clear that in this day and age, there is a limitless amount of categories. If you get bored of one thing, the next thing will pop up. If you get desensitized to one certain category because you've consumed so much of it, your dopamine reward centers will light up again when you get presented a new category. The next thing is the speed of consumption. The way information is presented to us these days gives us options to consume much more quickly. We have options in videos such as the one to speed up videos. So you can see videos at 1.5x or 2x, so you can receive information quicker. Or there's short form content, which presents to us much more information in a shorter time frame. Or there's For You pages, like on Instagram or on YouTube, where the type of content you are interested in is basically personally delivered to you. So the speed at which you're able to consume content which is interesting to you is very, very quick. And the last thing, and I would argue is the most critical thing, is secrecy. With our phones in our pockets, we've got this incredible tool that we can always use with the utmost privacy. Nobody has to know what we're doing, when we're doing, or for how long we are doing it. And what I'm talking about is consuming things online. Do you see what I mean now? Decades ago, this system of consumption did not exist. Ease of access? Well, people didn't have smartphones in their pockets to consume media. Maybe they'd have to go to the local store, buy a newspaper, or they would have to watch content on their old television in the lounge room with everyone else. When it comes to privacy, once again, they didn't have smartphones. So if they were consuming media, even if it was digital, it would have to be in the presence of a lounge room with their family around them, or they would have to go to the store, once again, to pick up a newspaper, or they'd go out to see a play or something like that. When it comes to the speed of consumption, there was no option back then to speed up videos. There were no For You pages that would tailor content specifically for the person. And lastly, there was very limited novelty. You wouldn't even have novelty. You wouldn't have so many different varieties of content available at your fingertips. If you got bored by something, you would probably be stuck with that thing. But then the flip side is, because you had so many less options, you would also get less easily bored. The point is, the environment back then wasn't even set up to enable people to get hooked or addicted to things. That wasn't even an option. But the thing is, we're humans. We're not robots. The setup of the current environment is unfortunately to our detriment. It's set up to, one, make us go down rabbit holes struggling harder and harder to stop when we know deep down that we should. 2, make us waste time on unproductive things that just keep us further and further away from where we want to get to in life. And 3, this system just makes us compare our lives to the lives of others, our peers, our friends, everyone else around us in ways that are unreasonable and just unhelpful. All of this leaves us feeling more anxious, more stressed, and less fulfilled in life. And the interesting thing is, I genuinely think that none of this stuff with social media, all this content online would be an issue if these 4 things that I mentioned earlier didn't exist, or at least to the extremity that they do. These 4 things that make up the system of how consumption works. Once again, ease of access. There's no barrier to entry. Number 2, the privacy of access. You can consume as much as you want, nobody has to know. Number 3, the speed of consumption. You can consume a lot very quickly. And number 4, the unlimited novelty. The unlimited number of categories that keep you enticed so you never ever get bored. The reality is the system probably won't change, ever. Big tech designed the system for a reason. The system is geared to keep us hooked to our phones, glued to our screens for as long as possible, because that's what makes money. However, that's not a reason to not have hope. I'd like to think that with this new perspective that I'm sharing about the fact that it's a system that's been designed to not really benefit your well-being at all, that's the actual issue rather than you yourself. The next thing worth wondering about is, why is it though that we are so vulnerable to cave into this temptation to pick up our phones and just consume, when the reality, it doesn't end up making us feel too good in the long run. You know, maybe we're running away from our problems. Maybe it's easier to just pick up our phone and watch a few stupid videos online because it distracts us. Maybe it temporarily eases our stresses and anxieties. Maybe we pick up our phones just because it's a habit we've built for a very, very long time, and it's just a behavior we've learned. Maybe it's a behavior that can be unlearned. Previous generations, decades ago, didn't have mobile phones, but they still did have options for entertainment and media to consume. It was more so the nature of the system that entailed their consumption that was fundamentally different. The ease of access, the speed of consumption, the unlimited novelty. Look, I'm no personal development guru. I don't think I ever want to be. But in my head, the solution to this issue is actually quite simple. And I don't think it requires anybody to sign up with a $1,000 or $2,000 course to get the answers they need. I think the solution is for us to just embrace stillness and silence and boredom. That might sound a little bit weird, right? But hang in there for a second. Here's what I mean. The next time you're doing the dishes, or the next time you're ironing your clothes, or the next time you're putting away your clothes, maybe don't put on a podcast. Maybe don't watch a YouTube video or put on a Netflix show while you're doing that thing. Perhaps the next time you're going on a walk, maybe don't bring your earphones with you. Maybe don't listen to anything. Maybe don't look at your phone screen. And what's happening is that every single time you make a decision to not pursue external stimulation while you're doing something that is completely normal, you're building that habit. And I genuinely believe you are rewiring your brain to really embrace the calm and not chase after more and more stimulation. You gradually learn to become more comfortable with stillness, with silence, and just being with yourself. The next time you find yourself getting bored, just embrace being bored. I know you're going to be feeling an itch to pick up your phone. I do every single time. I'm no saint. I'm prone to this just as much as you are. However, I do think it's as simple as that. Every single time you make a decision to choose the present moment rather than picking up your phone, you are building the habit of not being susceptible to those four things that I mentioned earlier: the ease of access, the privacy, the high speed of consumption, and the unlimited novelty. Those four things won't affect you as much anymore, even though they are geared towards keeping you hooked on your phone. They are geared towards ultimately making you more of an anxious human being, because you're just seeing so much negative news all over the world that you have no control of. You're seeing what everyone else is up to in their lives, and even though you're trying your best, it unfortunately just doesn't make you feel too good, because people just show the best versions of themselves online, and that's totally fine. But for you to see that every single day, every single hour of every single day, it's not good for you. It's not normal. It's not what humans for thousands and thousands and thousands of years have been subject to. It's literally something brand new that only happened 10, 15 years ago. And lastly, pay attention. Pay attention to how you're feeling. If you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling stressed, there is a chance that it could be to do with the external stimulation that you're being subject to. It's important to recognize, because this is a challenge that you're facing and your peers around you are facing, a challenge that the people of decades and decades ago didn't experience, not to this same magnitude at all. So please, be kind to yourself, because the chances are, if the older generations from decades and decades ago, like your parents or your parents' parents, were subject to the same temptations that you're subject to today, I guarantee you they would struggle the same, if not more, than you. You're doing great, and you've got it in you to take control.